अगर पाकिस्तान अपनी कश्मीर की फैंटेसी को और इंडिया के साथ अपनी एनिमोसिटी को दूर हटा दे तो उसकी इकोनॉमी एक्चुअली पॉजिटिवली रिस्पॉन्ड करेगी. फॉर कंपैरिजन, इंडिया क्रॉस 6% ग्रोथ रेट 20 टाइम्स इन द सेम पीरियड. दे आर टू डेंजरस to be allowed to fail. You cannot have another nuclear power become a lawless country. This would be the 13th IMF bailout for Pakistan in last 40 years. Since 1958, Pakistan has gone to IMF a total of 22 times. For comparison, India has gone to IMF for 7 times. The last time being in 1991. Ultimately, the only way to increase productivity is when people with knowledge are willing to stay in the country, when they are willing to come to the country. And this is a food for thought for India as well. Our defense is stretched on both of our northern borders to an unprecedented level. Hello friends, welcome to UPSC Wallah. This is Sonia Ahuja and today we are going to discuss why is IMF not bailing out Pakistan. IMF पाकिस्तान को जमानत क्यों नहीं दिला रहा है? But first we need to answer the question, why does Pakistan even need a bailout? Well guys, Pakistan's economy is on the verge of collapse because of high inflation, low foreign exchange reserve and a very high rate of unemployment. Last year, the unemployment rate was around 6.2% and this year it is expected to increase up to 7%. The country has reportedly doubled its debt roughly every 5 years over the last 2 decades. Pakistan is facing what we call as a twin account deficit problem, which means they are suffering from both a fiscal deficit as well as a current account deficit. Before 2019, Pakistan's economy was struggling to stay afloat, but it was nowhere in an imminent danger of collapse. But pandemic in 2020 and massive floods in 2022, Pakistan's economy की नींव टूट गई और अब धीरे धीरे पूरा economic structure fail हो रहा है. But just like many other developing nations, Pakistan's economy was in no position to absorb the shock that was created by the pandemic, and it brought Pakistan to the verge of bankruptcy. In 2022, floods inflicted an estimated loss of $3 billion, causing over 1,700 deaths and displacing 8 million people. In 2019, Pakistan had come to an agreement with IMF about an extended fund facility worth 6 billion, which was later increased to 7 billion. पाकिस्तान की उम्मीद थी कि IMF और कुछ फ्रेंडली देश के लोन्स और डोनेशन से they will recover from the twin deficit. But अब सिचुएशन इस वक्त कुछ ऐसी है कि ग्लोबल लेंडर्स लाइक IMF एंड ऑल वेदर फ्रेंड्स ऑफ पाकिस्तान लाइक चाइना, सऊदी अरेबिया, USA आर रिफ्यूजिंग टू डिस्पर्स एनी फंड्स. IMF के लोन का second tranche was supposed to be released in April of this year. And as of the recording of this video, this is the first week of May and no funds have been released. थोड़ा नज़दीक से देखते हैं इन पॉलिसीज़ को, उन इकोनॉमिक पैरामीटर्स को जो पाकिस्तान की इकोनॉमिक सिचुएशन को हाईलाइट करते हैं. आइए सबसे पहले जानते हैं पाकिस्तान की स्टेट इकोनॉमिक पॉलिसी के बारे में. Pakistan followed an uneven and pro-cyclic economic policy जिससे instantly तो growth boost मिलता है, but economy कमज़ोर होती जाती है. पाकिस्तान का economic structure और उनकी institution अंदर से खोखले होते जा रहे हैं. For example, जब पाकिस्तान को कहीं से पैसा आया तो बजाय के investing it in the economy कुछ इस तरीके से कि लोगों के कमाने की ability बढ़े, उन्होंने basic need goods पर भारी सब्सिडी दे दी. तब तो लोग खुश हो गए कि देखो हमारे यहाँ अनाज कितना सस्ता है, हम कितने कम पैसों में हमारे यहाँ सब मिल जाता है. फिर जब पैसे खत्म हो गए या कोई नेशनल इमरजेंसी आई जैसे कि पैंडेमिक या फ्लड्स, फिर सब चीज़ें वापस महंगी हो गई, बट लोगों की इनकम उतनी ही रह गई बिकॉज दे नेवर फोकस्ड ऑन इम्प्लीमेंटिंग द पॉलिसीज दैट इम्प्रूव बेसिक अर्निंग कैपेसिटी ऑफ द सिटीजन. इसको ठीक करने के लिए फिर से उन्होंने लोन लिया, अगेन रिपीटेड द सेम मिस्टेक. दिस इज द डेट साइकिल दे गॉट स्टक इनटू. अब IMF जब फाइनेंशियल असिस्टेंस देता है तो कुछ एक्सपेक्टेशंस होती है. IMF asks for structural changes. These are the type of changes that allows the state to come out of the debt cycle. Pakistan failed to keep these promises and resulted in IMF refusing to release the remaining funds that they agreed on. सो IMF ने क्या क्या डिमांड रखी थी? मेनली इंक्रीज एनर्जी रेट्स, इम्पोज मोर टैक्सेस एंड आर्टिफिशियली कंट्रोल द एक्सचेंज रेट। क्योंकि अब गवर्नमेंट ये चीज़ें करेगी, एनर्जी के प्राइसेस बढ़ाएगी, इनकम टैक्स बढ़ाएगी, सब्सिडीज को छीन लेगी, तो जनता इससे खुश तो नहीं होगी। बट जनता को थोड़ी सा देश चलाना है, देश चलाना तो गवर्नमेंट का काम है ना, जनता का काम तो घर चलाना है। वो तो चाहेंगे कि भाई बिजली का बिल कम आए, कम पैसों में सबका पेट भर जाए, बट लॉन्ग टर्म में बेसिक नीड्स पूरी हो, ये देखना गवर्नमेंट का काम है। सो फॉर लॉन्ग टर्म बेनिफिट ऑफ द सोसाइटी, हार्ड इकोनॉमिक डिसीजंस नीड टू बी टेकन। कभी कभी व्हाट इज गुड फॉर द इकोनॉमी माइट नॉट बी गुड फॉर द पॉलिटिक्स। We know Pakistan's economic crisis has been going on for more than 2 decades. Question is, how did Pakistan manage to convince IMF to issue another loan in 2019? Well, this great achievement was possible because of international credit agencies who gave quite a lenient rating to Pakistan's economy. IMF believed in the rating of these agencies as if 2008 में तो कुछ हुआ ही नहीं हो. For example, Moody upgraded Pakistan's credit outlook from negative to stable. Credit Suisse, another international credit agency, released a report titled Pakistan on the Path to Recovery. The article said, as a result of IMF's package, the fundamentals of the economy has improved significantly. They reported that there is a fiscal consolidation and that Pakistani government has been undertaking all the necessary measures for structural change. In reality, the government took some ad hoc measures to make it look like they were doing well. Instead of actually making those structural changes, Pakistan reduced current account deficit by import compression and steep depreciation of Pakistani rupee. The problem with that is it came at the cost of economic growth. पाकिस्तान की जीडीपी 2019 में 3.5% के आसपास थी और आईएमएफ ने प्रेडिक्ट किया था कि ये घटकर कुल 2.5% रह जाएगी 2020 में. So on paper it looked like Pakistan was able to make the changes that were laid by IMF for funds that they had already released. But we all know what happened in 2020 when COVID crossed borders and the world started to shut down. High taxation, high interest rates, ऊपर से devaluation of Pakistani rupee, which raised the prices of import. All of this led to a massive fall in industrial production. During this time, global scene was rapidly shifting. Pandemic के कारण चाइना के साथ जो लैंड बॉर्डर है पाकिस्तान की वो बंद हो गई. Overnight, the cost of importing goods from China surged up to 100%. In short, Pakistan's economy was creeping closer and closer to an inevitable disaster. Let's talk about some economic indicators with respect to Pakistan. These are indicators that exhibit the state of an economy. First indicator, Pakistan rupee versus dollar. इतने volatile economic condition के बीच Pakistan rupee plunged to a historic low of 288 rupees against a US dollar. Second indicator, Forex crunch. Foreign exchange reserve in the State Bank of Pakistan depleted 5.5 billion during the week that ended on December 30th, 2022. This means without any help, the country would default on its debt. This is known as sovereign default. It is the failure of a country to pay its debt back. क्या होता है sovereign default से? It slows the economic growth and it bars the government from borrowing any more money overseas investors say over the long period. Third indicator, inflation. With massive spikes in the prices of food products and other essentials, the inflation rate is at an all-time high around 24.5% in December last year. It is reported that a single roti cost about 30 rupees. कंटेक्स्ट समझिए, एक मिनिमम डेली वेज कुछ 500 रुपए के आसपास है, विथ एन एवरेज फैमिली कंज्यूमिंग 10 रोटीज पर डे. एक टाइम ऐसा आ गया था जब सरकार ने लोगों को चाय पीने से मना कर दिया था बिकॉज पाकिस्तानी गवर्नमेंट इंपोर्ट्स टी. The government slashed subsidies and raised taxes to comply with the bailout terms and secured the release of 1.2 billion portion of the deal that has been stalled since December. Both these measures resulted in the price of food and gas and power to increase. Fourth indicator, growth rate. As we mentioned earlier, the ad hoc economic policies of Pakistan came at the cost of their economic growth. Now, IMF has lowered its forecast of Pakistan's economic growth rate from 2% to 0.5% for the current fiscal year, while they face high inflation and a growing rate of unemployment. Between 1993 and 2020, Pakistan's economy grew more than 6% only twice, 2004 और 2005 में. And this happened जब इंडिया और पाकिस्तान के बीच में पीस टॉक चल रही थी, सीज फायर थी. इससे हमें एक बात पता चलती है कि अगर पाकिस्तान अपनी कश्मीर की फैंटेसी को और इंडिया के साथ अपनी एनिमोसिटी को दूर हटा दे तो उसकी इकोनॉमी एक्चुअली पॉजिटिवली रिस्पॉन्ड करेगी. फॉर कंपैरिजन, इंडिया क्रॉस 6% ग्रोथ रेट 20 टाइम्स इन द सेम पीरियड. फिफ्थ इंडिकेटर, लोन डिले. Panic set in when IMF team that had come to negotiate the details left without reaching a final agreement. Why have they not come to an agreement? Because IMF, Saudi and UAE all have been calling for structural reforms in the economy. But a government cannot make such reforms at a time when people are suffering from the worst financial crisis of their lifetime. This is the time when the government should be increasing its spending to elevate people from its suffering. Sixth indicator, increase in unemployment and poverty. As you know, whenever there is a disaster, man-made or natural, who bears the brunt? The common people. The situation in Pakistan is so bad that other than basic blue-collar job, there's nothing left for the country's educated youth. According to the recent report, the unemployment in Pakistan grows in proportion to the level of education, which means the more educated a Pakistani is, the greater the likelihood of him remaining unemployed. This situation is further exacerbated by the looming prospect of tens of thousands of Pakistanis working in the Middle East, losing their job and returning home, which will also impact the remittances that are so critical for Pakistan's balance of payment. Seventh indicator, external debt. The Pakistani government will have to return 77.5 billion as an external debt in the next 3 years, which is by 2026, as per the analysis of United States Institute of Peace. The report also noted that the major portion of this 77.5 billion is owed to China and has to be paid in June, when 1 billion Chinese safe deposit and roughly 1.4 billion Chinese commercial loan would mature. Conclusion, the entire revenue of the federal government would have to go into debt servicing, and they would still fall short. So everything else, including defense, running the government, development expenditure, etc., will have to be paid through borrowing more money. And we are back to the debt cycle till the end of time. So how is Pakistan responding to this crisis? They're doing nothing. They've brought the country, the economy, to a standstill. They have killed all the imports. They have increased the interest rate by the central bank, which means doing business has become impossible due to high borrowing costs, and the basic necessities of the citizen like medicine, fuel, food are not being met because Pakistan is a heavy import dependent state. So here are some facts. Global rating agency Moody has downgraded Pakistan's sovereign credit rating from CAA3 to CAA1. By taking such drastic measures, the economy is at the standstill. Moody's rating for India is Baa3, which is also not the best. So what are the roadblocks for Pakistan to get loans? First roadblock, the Pakistani government was under the delusion that they would be saved by their friends or international community because they are too dangerous to be allowed to fail. You cannot have another nuclear power become a lawless country. Also, Pakistan is the fifth most populous country, moving towards becoming the fourth. It is also the 16th largest with respect to nuclear pileup. Now, why is IMF reluctant to bail out Pakistan for the nth time? Well, Pakistan has consistently violated its commitments to the IMF, which is now no longer willing to cut Pakistan any slack. This would be the 13th IMF bailout for Pakistan in last 40 years. Since 1958, Pakistan has gone to IMF a total of 22 times. For comparison, India has gone to IMF for 7 times, the last time being in 1991 during the economic reforms, which as we know went successfully. Another hurdle in the recovery of Pakistan is 2023 is an election year. Implementing the IMF conditions will be nothing short of a political suicide. In 2019, previous Imran Khan government had managed to secure 6.5 billion package from IMF, but it was discontinued midstream because conditions were not met. Because the truth is, good economics is bad politics, and good politics is bad economics. Let's understand the position of all-weather friends of Pakistan. Let's start with US. The leverage that Pakistan had with US was because of its border with Afghanistan. After the US left and Taliban rule came back, the leverage ended. Pakistan was needed to fight Taliban, and that brought them geostrategic leverage. Instead of using it to strengthen their economy and polity, it was used instead to arm twist India on Kashmir and other issues, pushing the country to the point where no business could survive. Because there was no conducive environment, both the capital and the individual talent left the country. The second all-weather friend, China. Well, Pakistan's dependence on China has brought Pakistan to at loggerheads with USA. Considering the conflict of interest between China and US, Pakistan is heavily indebted to China. China provided a 700 million relief package in February. We will have to wait and see how China responds to this crisis. It should be noted that any help from China comes at a price. Like what happened in Sri Lanka, where the Chinese took over the Hambantota port during the recent crisis. It is unlikely that Pakistan would ever be able to pay for the China-Pakistan economic corridor. How and when China's debt trap policy will start in Pakistan is yet to be seen. Let's understand some structural problem with the government in Pakistan. The first problem is the army. The problem began during the hybrid civil-military regime headed by Imran Khan and then Army Chief General Qamar Javed Bajwa. Khan left the running of the government to army, and army used his incompetence to cover up their own mishaps. Another thing that adds to the existing economic problem is that the country continues to pay for the apparent intimacies between the security establishment and the violent extremist groups. The Tariq-e-Taliban, Pakistan's TTP, its attack on the mosque in Peshawar, police lines, it killed over 100 people, and it has done a severe blow to the morale of the nation. If accountability ever existed, the Pakistan army would be held responsible for what the country looks like today, a basket case with nuclear weapons. Let's compare what India and Bangladesh did in the similar situation. जब इंडिया पर इकोनॉमिक क्राइसिस आया, what did we do? We brought in Dr. Manmohan Singh. Putting aside the dynasty politics, we got competent individual to handle situation. We had people with the caliber of Dr. Raghuram Rajan as the RBI governor. Do you think Pakistan की आर्मी कभी भी डॉक्टर मनमोहन सिंह की तरह टफ इकोनॉमिक डिसीजन ले पाएगी? Let's talk about Bangladesh, which again has dynasty politics. When faced with financial doom, they assigned competent individuals. Sri Lanka एक और country है जहाँ similar level of governance incompetence है. And we can see अभी क्या हालत है Sri Lanka की. Ultimately, the only way to increase productivity is when people with knowledge are willing to stay in the country, when they are willing to come to the country. And this is a food for thought for India as well. A lesser talked about point is a society with a high level of intolerance and violence, which sadly in this case is their own making, would find it difficult to sustain its economy. An economy flourishes in social structure which has peace of mind, and not a state where they are in constant race after a propped up enemy. So what can Pakistan do? First, restructure the economy. Election aate jate hai. What matters is to do the right job, the correct job, and let the history judge you. The current government should put the economy and the people of Pakistan first and make the required reforms. It will be the most difficult thing to do, but they will have to undertake social, political, and governance reform. Also ensure human rights, minority rights. Put an end to religious persecution, especially the Ahmadi community, the Hindu, Sikh, and Christian minorities. Second, renounce terrorism. Make credible, visible, verifiable action against terrorist groups of all types. No more distinction between good Taliban and bad Taliban, nor let any leeway be given to local and regional terrorist groups. Third, restrain and reduce the nuclear arsenal. Make the control and command system more transparent. Stop using nuclear weapon as a tool for diplomatic blackmail or even as a currency for negotiations. Challenges for India. What does this mean for India? Primarily, this situation makes Pakistan vulnerable and nuclear country. So we can understand the implications. Our defense is stretched on both of our northern borders to an unprecedented level. Keeping aside the historical animosity between India and Pakistan, the reality is the more democratic and economically stable our neighbor is, the better it is for us. And as the quote goes, you can change friends, but not neighbors.